Greetings, everyone. It's my pleasure to welcome everyone to today's webinar, Building Creativity in the Age of Big Data, Fact Finding, the Foundation of Innovation. And a little extra to this title, a scarce skill in corporations. Big thanks for everyone tuning in. We know how busy people are, so we're working hard to keep these events interesting, relevant, and on target. We do encourage questions, so please use the question and chat tools in your webinar console. I'll be monitoring them and collecting them for a Q&A discussion afterwards. A little bit about Min. Some of this you may already be familiar with, but some of you may not. Min began developing his insights about creative thinking and problem solving at Procter & Gamble more than 30 years ago. While at P&G, he received 3 U.S. patents and created a corporate-wide internal consulting practice. Following his award-winning doctoral research at the University of Cincinnati, Min became a professor of management in the Michael G. DeGroote School of Business at McMaster University. He continues to teach in an executive education program for Aalto University and the innovative and creative problem-solving module at the Conference Board of Canada's Directors College. Min's first book, The Power of Innovation, became an instant CEO need to read. He founded Bassler Applied Creativity in 1981 and has since traveled the world applying and teaching Simplexity Thinking to many of the world's Fortune 500 companies. Now I'm going to turn it over to Min, where he'll be exploring the world of fact-finding and how important this part of the creative process is to innovation. Over to you, Min.
Okay, thanks, Bob, and thanks again to everybody who's tuning in. It really helps us feel good about the work that we're doing. Today, our goals are, how do you go forward from fuzzy situations? The last time we were together, we talked about the importance of discovering good problems and understanding them as fuzzy situations, ready to move forward. The idea of generating facts. Look at the facts you got, your situation, from many different perspectives. Oh, cutting through information overload. Today, we are deluged with information, which is great. But when it gets so large, what do we do with it, and how do we get it into neat ideas? Simple language is absolutely critical. Kids are really creative. They talk simple. The whole notion of simplexity is trying to take complicated things and simplifying them, and that's why we call it simplexity. And you can't solve problems unless you understand what the other person is saying. And the key fact-finding, really good fact-finding, moves you right on to problem definition, and there's where we find the golden nuggets which ignite innovation. So remember now, this is the process we've used in previous ones, and people have their own styles, creative problem-solving process styles. There's 4 of them. The generating style, which includes fact-finding. Conceptualizing, which includes problem definition and ideas. Optimizing, which means making the very best solution. Optimizing and creating a plan and implementing is we have to get the solution that we figured out implemented and people on board with it. Okay, so here we go, and this is the model we're using. Albert Einstein said many profound things, but this is one of the key ones. I would spend 55 minutes defining the problem, including fact-finding, and only 5 minutes finding the solution. This was the trick to difficult problems. Here is what the world looks like. This is based on our research. Over 21,000 people all over the world who are like yourselves. And the fact-finding portion is one of the weakest in terms of preference. One of the strongest, of course, is implementation, and this is why more fact-finding is needed. When we work with major corporations, the Procter & Gambles of the world and others, we have such top people that we have to really work hard on plumbing and getting them to plumb the facts, and it's amazing how things pop up when they put their minds to it. Where are we going? First of all, let's experience fact-finding. What's it feel like? Some really interesting, anyway to me, I think to you too, some real stories. And then how do you do it? And then what are some key takeaways we could try to apply to ourselves when we leave here? Okay, let's try this, experiencing it. Here is if you've got a piece of paper and a pencil, it'd be great if you could try this for me. It's something that I use with people all over. Say I ask you to write down this symbol, and say you do. And so here's the problem I want you to work on. The challenge for you is, with this symbol, add 1 line and make 6. Now that's the end of the challenge. And what a lot of people want to do is say, gee, let me ask you, what do you mean by that? And the answer is please don't ask me any questions. Just go to town. Anything you do here is going to be correct because they're simply diverging. So again, add one line and make 6. And whatever you do may be different from anybody else. If there's more of you in the group, you might share some ideas. I'm going to give you another few seconds. And here's something to think about when you do a problem like this. It's called transforming. To what extent can you transform the problem and see it from different angles? Twist and turn it. Turn it upside down. Rotate it. Watch the assumptions. Are you assuming things you don't need to assume? Try something different, something novel. Make it simple. Fuse something. Add something onto it. Could you leave something out? Omit. Rearrange these pieces and make it bigger, make it smaller. Now, going back to this is what you're looking at. So let's say you might have a couple of things written down. And I want to share with you some of the ones that people come up with, the variety. Some people add another line on the right-hand side and say, hey, I added a line. We have 4 in the middle, meeting in the middle instead of 2 crisscrossing, and we have another one, which is 6. Absolutely correct answer. Somebody else will say, well, that seems to be the same, but here's what I did. I added this little line over here, and again, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 little lines. Now, I'm going to challenge you, say, well, that's a good solution. Is there another solution we can get out of this by building on that one? For example, if you could see this from the point of view somebody who loves Roman numerals, see it from that standpoint, and what do we see? And somebody's going to say, well, you know, I think that's the Roman numeral for 60. So in fact, we've made 10 6s in front of us, and that's the way the process works. We build, we build. Now somebody says, you know what I did? I put an S in front to make the word 6. And this is interesting because somebody says, well, I thought the line had to be straight. Now, the point was, I never said that, but we have a little man on our shoulders. He's whispering in our ear all the time. Keep the line straight. Keep the line straight. He's always making us assume. One of the biggest problems with fact-finding is the assumptions that we make instead of keeping an open mind. Now, a little kid would look at this and probably say, I'm just learning how to read and write, and I'll put an S in front. I've never seen a Roman numeral. And so looking at it as differently as we can is really important to open up our minds. No matter what we think, we got the right answer. Now, here's another person who says, hey, that gives me an idea. Maybe that X could be a multiplication sign. So a little kid would simply say 1 times 6, and that opens up the Pandora's box even further. Now, this is what some people do. They'll draw a line right through the middle, and some of them will look at it and say, well, I did that, but I'm not sure what it means. Now, half an aha is better than no aha at all. Now, how many of you can easily see 1, 2, 3 lines above and 1, 2, 3 lines below? Would that not be okay? But on the other hand, from a Roman numeral standpoint, what's the Roman numeral on top? Now, some people are going to say it's 4, but really, you could look at it kind of differently. And one thing we could do is turn it upside down. And if we turn it upside down, what do we have on top? We got 6. So there's many different ways to look, and sometimes things look very, very different when we turn them upside down. What if we ask the customer to look at this? What if we look at a supplier to look at this? What if we ask their kids to look at this? Do something to turn it upside down. Now, this is one that kids do almost right away, and if I get a group of adults, almost nobody does this, but somebody might, and he's even reluctant to say so because he says, well, I thought it was cheating. And you say, well, how is that? And he says, well, I didn't use the X. Now, this is omit. There's nothing in the instructions I gave that said you had to use everything. Now, back in school, we had to use everything, but not in real life. So you can take whatever part you want, and here's a very simple answer that sometimes we shy away from. Now, sometimes the same thing happens. Somebody will put a line through the middle, and they'll say, you know, I don't think it's right because I've got 7. I've got that line over there. The point is, again, we don't have to use everything. If we could just forget the one on the right, left, look at all the 6s we've got. We've got 6 lines meeting in the middle. We've got 6 points going all around. We've got 6 angles, 6 slices of pizza. Roman numerals, if I take the V on top and swing over and take the one on the side, I've got a VI. Well, I move around the circle, VI, VI, all around the circle. I've got so many 6s, but I'm blocked if I let that one block me. Now, here's a novel one. Somebody says, well, I just took the S and cut half of it out and put a C up there. We got the sound 6. So it's a different, it's not a number, it's not a word, but it is a sound, a different way of looking. Now, finally, the last one I'm going to show you is one that was given to me one time and so interesting. Somebody said, you know, I really like that one where you put the little circle around the one. I want a big circle. I want you to start at the top, come on around, don't touch the bottom, and come on around the back. And now you got 6. Now, you know, every answer is correct. But again, I said, I'm not sure how this is 6. Now, this guy said one of the secrets is don't use the X. Just forget the X, omit it, and look at this. Now, some of you may see this and some of you may not see it. But it's a big aha. In the digital age, if you've never seen anything that wasn't digital, you wouldn't know. But somebody said we see this every day, twice a day, when we wake up and we go to sleep. And of course, it's a clock. And everybody sees 6 o'clock up here. Very interesting point of view, a very interesting idea. And once we say it, everybody's got it. Now, the hot wax story. This goes back to my days at Procter & Gamble when I was working hard in the industrial division, making products for laundry and many, many other products for the industrial division. One day, my boss, Charlie, calls me in and he says, listen, we got something new for you. You're going to lead the automatic car wash group. I said, okay, Charlie, whatever. I didn't know we had one. And Charlie says, yeah, we do. We got so many things. We're trying to make a business in industrial. We don't want to be a retail company only. One of the things we're trying to get into is automatic car wash. Now, the problem is we have got a whole bunch of products for automatic car washes, but we don't have a hot wax. And our sales department says if only we had that complete line, including the hot wax, we could make a lot of money. He said, we've got 2 chemists working upstairs, and they've been working for quite a while. It's about 1.5 years. And they keep on working, but nothing comes out, and our sales guys are starting to get a little bit yancy about this whole thing. So if there's anything you could do, please get this hot wax out on the market for us. And I said, okay, so now here's 2 things you need to know. I had never been to a car wash in my whole life. I just washed the car on Saturdays to save some money. Second of all, I'd never heard of hot wax. So is it fair to say that I know nothing? Now, there's something really good about knowing nothing. And one of them is that you can ask any dumb questions you want and people are not going to laugh at you because you don't know anything. So I moved into fact finding and I went to the 2 chemists and I said, gee guys, can you tell me what the heck is hot wax? And they said, well, it's something you pay the man at a car wash. He asks for an extra $1, and if you give it to him, he'll press the button and you're going to get this hot wax at the back, and the car goes through and the lights go on, and that's what happens. And I said, okay, well, why is everybody so excited? And they said, well, because it's very profitable. Of that $1 you gave him, he puts 95 cents in his pocket. 1/10 of a cent goes on your car, and 4.9 cents go right up to the only person in the world who makes hot wax. He's up in Cleveland, and it's called Bear's Hot Wax. And I said, okay, what's the problem? And they said, well, the thing is, everything in a car wash has to be done by water. Everything is water-based and wax. It's good stuff. You polish your shoes with wax in it, but it doesn't mix with water. And so this is very difficult to the wax and water together. And I said, well, what did Mr. Bear do? And they said, well, one day he woke up and he said, if I melt the wax, hot wax, and then I put hot water, they'll stick together. Well, they said, well, it didn't work. And I said, well, what happened? They said, well, we went to a chemical company who told them about solubilizers, which are things you can put in. They don't do anything, but they do help 2 things mix. And he tried a bunch of them, and he came up with something that would stay together as a solution, could be used in the car wash. And I said, okay, so what are you 2 doing? Just tell me. And they said, well, we're trying to do the same thing. We get the wax, we get the water, we mix them together, and we try to find different things that we can put in, solubilize, but everything we come up with is just about the same thing he's got. So we're unable to get around his patent. He's got a patent on this thing right now, so unusual. Okay, so I said, okay, so I guess what they're working on, I'm thinking to myself, is how might we mix the wax and the water in kind of a new way that doesn't violate the patent, which is okay. But I kept on fact-finding, and because I didn't know much, and I said, well, how good is his stuff? And they said, well, it's really good because people are lining up all over the country to buy it. And I said, good. I said, well, what do the test methods show? And they said, we don't have any test methods. We didn't have the time, and we're just jumping in, and we can see it's good. So being a little bit naive, and the Procter & Gamble way is that you really do test. So I said, why don't we make a little simulated car wash, over the sinks, and you will go out and buy some metal, and we'll pretend we got a car wash going here, rinse, cycle, da-da-da. At the far end, we've got Mr. Bear's hot wax ready to go hit it. Well, the first one comes through and bing, ping, hits the wet metal, and the stuff goes down the drain. Nothing on the metal. We change the pressure, we change the temperature all day long. Ping down the middle, ping down the middle, nothing on the metal. New fact has turned up is we cannot make this product work in the lab. So what about the car wash? We had 100 people go in, 50 with, 50 without. They all looked the same going in. They all looked the same going out. No information saying we had anything that this is working. New fact is we've been trying to duplicate a product for about a year and a half that doesn't work. So we went back to square one. We went to a Western Auto store, Canadian Tire store, and we looked at the car wax section. A whole bunch of products, including Simonize, that were hand things. You did there were liquids and polishes, and you did your car by hand. Every one of them seemed to contain one name, which is the active ingredient being silicone. So that was a new fact, and we went back and said the trouble is that silicone is a water-hating liquid, and that's too bad. And if you polish, if you want to ward off your shoes with water, you put it on. But we did share facts with the Dow Corning company, who came over and let us know that their chemists had been working on a new product for a long time called T22, where they put a water-loving molecule onto the basic silicone molecule, and now they basically had a solution in hand. New fact. So we asked them to send us a gallon, and they did. I was very excited. We ran through the simulated car wash, and bingo, at the end, this stiff did not do ping, falling off. It stuck to the metal almost like gum. So we had a new fact. We had something that polished metal. It did mix with water. And what we worked on over the summer, 2 months, was trying to come up with a formula that would hold through freeze-thaw. It did provide a benefit to a car. And we put it on the market, and we were very, very happy that we had solved that problem. We called it Hot Glow. Now, here's what happened next. The patent department came down, and they said, hi, that product is doing so well, we've been instructed to go after a patent. I think we can get one. And I said, great. And they said, guess who we're going to give it to? And I said, beats me. And they said, we're going to give it to you. And I said, why me? They said, because, in effect, you're the guy who was fairly not too smart and admitted it. You didn't know exactly what you were doing, but you asked the right questions to move this to the right question, and we're going to give the patent to you. So if you want to get a patent, I always say you don't have to be very good or very smart. Let people know you're not that smart, and then when you find something, they'll give you the patent. That's how I got it. Okay? So there's a great solution that came out of fact-finding and a real story that I can tell that I was part of. Innovative people do not jump from 1 to 8. We don't go from problem-finding to action. Innovative people, including myself, if I try real hard, we try to think in terms of problems, not solutions. And we're always in a hurry to jump, and we don't ask the right questions to find the real facts. And often we're solving the wrong problem. And again, this is what we look like overall, worldwide. We look like this, and our kind of our weaker strength in terms of what we like to do is fact-finding. Here's some fact-finding questions we know that work. What do we know or don't know about this situation? Open-minded. What don't we know but wish we knew? Why is it a problem for us? Why can't we make this thing go away? Let's start from the beginning. Let's start where we are right now. What have we tried? What hasn't worked? Then finally, if we got a solution, what would we have that we don't have now? Like very specifically, not more money, but what would we have? Excuse me. And then, are we making any assumptions that we don't have to assume? A big one. Now, the next, using these questions, here's the next story. This is the Frito-Lay Corporation, wonderful corporation, where I was lucky enough to do some work with people and teach Simplexity throughout the corporation, and we got a lot of people joining into the effort to solve problems and make things happen much better for Frito-Lay. And this was the cube utilization problem. This is a typical Frito-Lay truck, and it's called a cube. Now, The problem at the time was there was a team struck, and the problem was that many cubes were going out only 50% utilized. And this was very inefficient and costly, so the team was working on how to fill up the trucks before they left. And I was asked to work with the team and see if I couldn't help them. They'd been working for a year and a half to 2 and not really getting where they wanted to get. So the fact-finding thing really helped. We did fact-finding, and one of the key facts that came out was they were worried that they had a solution at hand. There was a company, a vendor, who said, if you can load the trucks differently than you do now with cartons, you could fill up the trucks and you could save a lot of money. Well, they wanted to, but they were worried about breakage. Does the new method cause more breakage? So I said, well, here we're doing, we sent tests from Minneapolis, from Los Angeles to New York, and then we measured the breakage, and we found out, we didn't find out much. It was about the same here, a little more there, a little less here. So we ran more tests. Same thing happened. We ran it from here to there, and a little more here, a little less there, and we can't really pin down how much breakage there is. So we're running more tests. The next thing they said was we wanted to take this occasion to find out if consumers prefer an optimal level of chip breakage. So we did focus groups in New York and Kansas City, and well, some liked it a little more, some liked it a little less breakage, and so we ran more focus groups, and we're going to do some more. So it's getting on in the morning, and I'm getting a little bit worried, and it seemed to me that there were 2 key facts. We agreed on these facts, is that we have not really been able to complete the breakage testing, and we not have been able to find the optimum level yet. So I said, that's interesting. So let's try this, and I put on the wall a how might we statement, and the how might we statement was how might we write a recommendation by 3 o'clock this afternoon that management is likely to accept, and because that's the way you do it. And they said, well, that would be a real good thing, except I don't think we can. And I said, well, let's try a process we use that works. It's called what's stopping us. When you're going up, you ask why, down is what's stopping us. I said, what's stopping us from making this recommendation? I said, well, we don't have our breakage data finished. And I said, well, that would be how might we get our breakage data finalized by 3 p.m. What else is stopping us? And they said, well, we don't have the optimum level determined of breakage. Well, how might we get the optimum level done by 3 p.m.? That's another how might. So my job as a facilitator, as a manager, is to say what else might be stopping us. It's always to stretch beyond the first few. So I said, what else might be stopping us from making this recommendation by 3 p.m.? Finally, after a long time, somebody said, I think I'm afraid to go ahead and make this recommendation without all the data that we need. And so a new how might turned up, which was, how might we write the recommendation in such a way that management understands the risk and shares it with us based on the key fact above. We're afraid of making the recommendation without being sure. We wrote the 2227 change document by 3 o'clock. In this way, it was approved immediately the next morning, $12 million to the bottom line. So one of the critical things about fact-finding is humans are involved, and we often screen out things that are not analytical, and we're afraid to say things about what we're worried about. Now, big data, all over now. We've got so much information, so many ways to gather data. It's amazing, and we put a huge amount of money into gathering data, maintaining big data, but then what do you do with it? How do you mine the data? We do surveys, focus groups, simulations, many methods, but one thing that is, and we do ethnography, observational studies, but what about the data in our heads? We have so much data in our heads, so many facts due to our experience. We're there, and the trick becomes how to mix these 2 sources. Here is an example of an ideation session we did with a really good company. And they said, we have got loaded with stuff. We got data all over the place trying to find out how to get some ideas for what we need. And they said, we're having trouble because we got so much we don't know how to get down to the ideas. And so we set up a session with them based on fact-finding. we send out a lot of background material. We said, could you gather a lot of that data you got, condense it as best you can, send it out to, say, 40 people who are going to be coming into our session, all kinds of our people. And they review it. Then what we ask them to do is look it all over. You don't have to memorize it. Just find 2 of the most important pieces of information you see in all this material. Bring them with you. When they came, we asked them to write them all on the wall. So we had 40 people writing their 2 most important information on the wall of all kinds. And then we engaged them in talking with one another and converging, using their judgment to converge upon the most important facts in their judgment using a method we call telescoping. And then we used the key facts as the hinge to develop how might we statements, which were the hinge to ideas. And this is what it looked like. Here's the telescope method. We took a huge amount of information and reduced it down to about 57 that people had picked out of the big number. Then the next step is not to judge, but to clarify. Discuss them to understand them. Every selected fact was discussed to understand and clarify by everybody. And finally, we used our judgment together in consensus and picked 11 that we thought were the most important and wrote them simply and clearly. That's the telescoping method. It's a wonderful method to come up with brand new ways of looking and often new ideas. We were then able to go to problem definition to turn them into how might we's. And remember, problem definition is over here and also on the weak side in terms of our preferences, but that's where we are on the right-hand side as opposed to the left. We generated many, many how might we statements, many. We selected the top how might we statements, and we were able to generate ideas, how to solve them, and we wrote them up, many, many, many ideas, and again, use telescoping to bring them down to the most important ones, use our brains, and finally, we used criteria that we agreed on to evaluate the best ideas, and we sorted through all the best ideas for each challenge that we picked. We picked the very best ideas and created action steps to pursue each. Now that would include testing them out with consumers, and but figuring out exactly what we're going to do, which is the action plan. And now we've come around, and then we would be looking for which one should we take further into finally some action. Here's the results. We created more than 500 ideas and narrowed that list down to what the cross-functional team thought we were the most promising. We took 45 and ranked them in focus groups with our customers to see what they said. Off of that, that's the evaluation. We took the top 8 and have built them into our roadmap to start moving into implementation. Now, creative behavior, remember, starts with finding a problem to get started with, being dissatisfied with something, discovering something. Fact-finding, conceptualizing, defining ideas, get the best solutions that you can, practical, and then get something done. If you're doing that continuously, you are going to be a creative organization. Now, observation. Another way we learn, not by asking questions, but by being there, observing, looking. Some of you will remember the Coast story. This, in retrospect, or quick. Procter & Gamble solved a problem they had where they were in the weeds for a while until they decided their problem was not to make better green stripes, but to make a better refreshment bar. And the refreshment bar they came up with was blue and white swirly, and was called Coast, and it simulated being on the beach and being refreshed. Well, that was great, but now we had a new problem. If we're going to make this thing, optimization, make this thing, look what the problem we've got. There are 6 worldwide patents on how you mix different colors of soap together. And so we were blocked and had to get around the patents to make Coast bars. So how to make them? Well, here's what happened. We made a team, including the legal department, very key players, and all kinds of other people, a mixture of people, some who would be very technically competent on mixing things and processing, people who knew not much. We got them in the room. We got the legal department to make 6 beautiful diagrams showing the crux of the problem for each one, put them on the wall, and we called this fact-finding. We talked to each other what we saw. Finally, some person who was not very technically qualified was just there to help, identified a technical detail and asked, why is that a 1/4 inch round instead of a 1/2 inch round? That was a key fact that everybody saw. And that fact opened up a brand new option for a way we could create our process. And that's exactly what happened. So again, open-minded, looking, but not necessarily asking questions, but being visually looking and listening and watching. What are some key learnings? We've come around awfully quickly, and I'm hoping that you're giving Bob some questions you'd like answered, but we've got some nice time right now to talk about maybe what are we talking about, and what are some of the learnings. And we've covered some of them. You know, so at the top, sometimes you find out by observation rather than just asking questions, although during the observation, of course, you could be asking questions. When people go out in the field to watch other people, they're taking notes on what people are doing, and these are facts. They're watching what they're doing, and those facts are brought back and shared with other people, and then we see what new challenges we can do. Now, top right, you got to be careful that when you're doing fact finding, you don't stop with the first one you find, or 5 or 6, or you aggressively look for possibly relevant facts. You talk to each other, talk to customers, talk to consumers, talk to family members. And the possibly relevant is key. If you think of a fact, what you don't want to do is prejudge it and say, well, I don't think it's relevant. You put that fact down, keep it, write it down. How in the world do you know if it's relevant? Because you haven't even decided what the real challenge is. You're dealing with a fuzzy situation. So look hard and don't prejudge. Gather all the facts you can, no matter how much they seem to be off target or on. They may be much more important than you think. On the left-hand side, share information. You need all the facts to solve a problem. Here's the stuff that happens in organizations. People don't share information. The sales department says, don't tell R&D. You know what they'll do with it. R&D says, well, if you tell marketing, you know they might misuse it. Marketing says, well, we don't want to necessarily share this with customers. And little by little, everybody is hanging onto their own little silo because they don't share the information. And you cannot solve any kind of a real problem if you don't have all the facts. And this is where we have to work together and learn how to work together. So we all know about the side. Even today's day and age, we've got difficulty with people sharing information. Sometimes they don't share information because they're worried. They're saying, I don't know if the fact I've got is that important or not, so I better not say anything. Or maybe I didn't read the pre-reading, so maybe my fact's not important. It's open to have people work together, not judgmental, but deferring judgment and not being afraid to put forward facts and not trying to preserve their own bailiwick because we don't trust the other guys before we tell them anything. Several viewpoints we got there, and that's an example. The more people you get involved, the better. If you're trying to solve a problem, maybe a manufacturing problem, why not bring in some suppliers who might be able to tell you something? How about some customers might be able to tell you something? Different departments, interfunctional, but encourage several people saying how they see it. It's divergent. As we saw a minute ago, in the middle, sometimes you have to dig out the real or hidden facts. People will be afraid to say, or they don't even know it's okay to say, or they've never even thought you should do anything that is not analytical, and say, well, I'm afraid to do this, or I was thinking it was this, but I never thought this was a real fact that you needed to do. And so you might have to dig by asking the questions repeatedly. What's stopping us from? Why else might we want to? Is there any things that we're still assuming? What would it look like if we were finished? And continue to dig out as many facts as you can. And we got the, on the right-hand side, engaging people to use the process to handle large amounts of data. Don't forget, you can never, never handle 300,000 pieces of data and be satisfied you did it perfectly. Go beyond the analytics alone and use the experience of your people to mix in with it. And you're not going to get everything absolutely correct, but you're going to get an awful lot of it, and you can trust your people to develop everything that's important. And one of the terms we use is, if it hasn't come out yet, trust the process, it's going to come out. If it didn't come out in the fact-finding, it's going to come out in the problem definition when we ask why we're stopping. If it didn't come out in that, it's going to come out in the ideas when people start going and pushing beyond the ideas they've got. If it hasn't come out there yet, it's going to come out when we do evaluate and select when we get into it. So move forward and don't stay back frozen with all that data you've got. You've got a process to help you to engage people. The negative attitude. As soon as you think the problem is negative, guess what you're going to do? You're going to get negative facts and restrict them. Keep an open mind and look at any problem that we can see as having good and bad sides to it, and we can open it up and looking for the golden eggs inside. Don't stop looking. Don't ever assume you've seen it before. In that IX problem I gave you, often people will have seen that problem before, and they'll put an S in front and stop. They say, I got the answer. Well, that's one answer. And as soon as you think you've done it, you'll never find anything else. And so we say, look, you've got an answer, but your job is to keep on looking. And now come the other answers. 1 times X, the clock, many, many answers. But as soon as you stop looking, there's an old phrase saying, today is the first day of the rest of your life. And your job is the same way. This is the first day I've seen my job. I've seen it before, but it's the rest of my life is ahead of me. The problems I'm working on, don't ever assume that we've already seen them. Yeah, but you've never seen them in the future. So look at them in a new way. Simple language. How many of you have been in a situation where people say, our biggest problem here is communication? Yeah, but what does that mean? Does it mean the phones don't work? People don't care what people in other departments are doing? Senior management does not pass down information? People send unclear email messages? We don't know the goals? We don't trust each other? You need to make that much more simple, otherwise we don't know what we're doing. When people say, oh, we all know what that means, you got a problem. It means that they don't want to take the time, that they don't really understand what it means, but they want to hurry. If the thinking is fuzzy, the words are fuzzy. It's a clear example of a time when you've got to dig in. What about if somebody says, well, you know, a key fact is that we need a clear business model. Sounds great. I read it in Harvard Business Review. What does it mean? Well, we don't have any idea where we're going strategically. We don't know which direction to go in. We don't know where we should put our resources, where to invest them. Much better stuff than we needing a model. Another one, watch the vagueness. Watch when somebody says, well, it's simple, we've got a motivation problem. What does that mean? Well, somebody says, well, one thing it means is that people here don't take pride in their work. What a useful piece of information that is versus what we started with. Somebody says, we've got to get more effective and more efficient. Wow, does that ever sound good? What does it mean? Does it mean our costs are too high? Does it mean our throughput is too slow? Does it mean our quality isn't so good? Does it mean that a lot of people, there's a lot of absenteeism? What does it actually mean? And unless you get into those simple words, we'll know where we don't know what we're really saying and what the problem really is. And of course, we got to watch the acronyms where people start using big words that other people in the team don't understand, and we got to reduce those acronyms to what are we really trying to say. Another one that comes up is, well, the problem is that we don't have enough resources. Okay, well, what kind of resources are we talking about? Are we talking about not enough people? We're talking about not enough equipment. We're not enough talking about money. What exactly are we talking about? Then we can deal with it. Final one. What people often say is, gee, if we only had more people and more time. Well, the point is, let's realize that you're not going to get enough more money. You're not going to get enough time. What they're paying us for is to be really good with what we've got and get good facts and get good problems defined to help us. Okay, so that's, and with the assumptions we've covered, we're always making assumptions. It's good for us to question the assumptions. And are we holding ourselves back some way that we don't know? And finally, the courage to say what you think. If you're in a group of 7 people, and the 6 of them are all talking in one direction, they're going in a certain direction, and you see that there's a different direction that you'd like to go in, quite different, but you say to yourself, you know, I'm only 1 out of 7. They're pretty smart people, so I'll just go along with them. And you do. You might as well not be on the team. You could have had the best contribution, the best fact to say, but you didn't, because we tend to dismiss ourselves. We assume that if I thought of it, it couldn't be any good, and other people here would have already said it. Guess what? If you're in a group of 50 people and you think of something, probably half the group is thinking about the same thing you're thinking. But if everybody is thinking it's too simple, and I better not say it because they'll all laugh at me, then we got a problem. Somebody has to step forward. And we also have to have an environment among us that we encourage people to say things that they might be afraid to say in other places, but we're okay here. With that, I'm going to, we've hit, I think, a good target on time. I'm going to turn it back to Bob so he can take us through some questions and some next steps. Is that okay, Bob?
That's great, man. Thank you. You want to flip that slide over? I'll talk a little about next steps before we get into questions. We've got a number of questions here, but just to give people a heads up, there's you can call us anytime, 905-690-4903. We'd love to hear from you. You want to run anything by us, talk about anything that's specific, maybe to you personally or your organization, feel free to give us a ring. We're starting to run some webinar coaching sessions. We just did one with a company in the UK last month. It was a big success, and I know for many of you, it's difficult to travel our way and meet face to face, but that's something that we're trying to increase and encourage you to give us a shout about something like that. Our next workshop in the certification process is running October 27th, 29th. There's a quick link, vassar.com/October workshop. We've got a neat group that has starting to take shape. So please, if you're interested, click on that link and register. Our next webinar is going to be November 4th, same time. We're going to get into step 3, and this is really where the rubber hits the road for us. How might we? Asking questions that ignite big ideas. So I hope you can tune into that one. You'll be getting emails from us as such. But now I want to get into a few questions, and we've got a number of questions here. And one question we have is, can you go from 1 to 8 in a couple of days, or does it take much longer? How long typically does it take you to go from the sort of step 1 through 8?
Terrific question. And of course, the whole idea is how much time do you have? And if you've got 6 months to develop a brand new product, well, that's one thing. And the point is, this is a process that is not just for long-term product development ideas. It's for quick hits. And what happens if something hits us between the eyes? What do we do now? And do we do a knee-jerk reaction? Or do we take a few seconds to say, hang on, before we jump into something that might get us into trouble, let's do some fact-finding real quick. Let's put down some challenges for ourselves. How might we do this? How might we do that? And if you do that little investment, could be 5 minutes, you're probably going to find, and what's stopping us? You're going to probably find a really good how might we that you can get some solutions on real quick. And what you've really done is come around the wheel. And you can do that very, very quickly. So we did talk earlier about react quickly, proact, and do routines. The proact could take longer, where you are finding your own problems and going after them. The react is something hit us between the eyes, a crisis. How might we turn that into an advantage for us? So it isn't going directly to 8. It's coming around quickly over the process. That's a great, one of the challenges we've got is to try to get people convinced that this kind of thinking is not just for long-term product development stuff. It's also for short-term hits and helps a manager get through the day much, much faster, especially if he's willing to share the problem with a couple of colleagues quickly and move on to the next and move on to the next, rather than trying something out, doesn't work, back and forth, back and forth. Great question.
Okay, another question here, and it's kind of a 3-parter, but it's all kind of one, and I kind of know the answer, but I think I'll send it to you, is how can we quickly assess which quadrant our staff or group is in, and what what would you say is the optimal mix of people in a session? And thirdly, kind of what is an optimal size for a fact-finding problem-solving session?
Yeah, and Bob, I think you probably could lead people to how they can get everybody assessed. So maybe I'll leave that one to you. We have it online, and you can quickly get this, especially as a team leader, get everybody done and get a scatter diagram. Well, The key thing is it depends. Everything else depends on the problem. After you've done a good pre-consult and with the important people who own the problem, the question becomes: is this a very, very large, long-term problem or a very small problem? Um, if it's a long-term problem, uh, it's going to be what we call a complex problem, which is you've got to have problem definition in there. You got to really do a great job of fact-finding problem definition. And now, if it's a really simple problem, like we just need a ton of, we already have figured out that we're trying to position this new product as an adult toothpaste. We just need 300 ideas how to do it. Well, you can have a very large group, very large group. But if you've got that other one, which is how we're going to position our toothpaste, we don't know how. The smaller the group, the better. We usually talk about 5, 6, 7. But don't make the mistake of leaving somebody out who's very important to include to go to 8 or 9 or 10. So that's one way to look at it. In terms of a mix, it depends on the problem again. You can be pretty creative about this, and we've had people do very interesting things where they take the same how might we, and they take 4 different groups and give it to them. And the 4 different groups are different mixes of the styles to see what ideas they might come up with, and then pull them all together. We think, in generally, having a good mix is important, and you just never know. You never what's going to come out, but boy, you've really helped yourself a lot by having all the bases covered and saying, why don't we make sure we've got a generator in here? Why do we make sure we got a couple of optimizers? And make sure that you don't overload it. And if you overload it one way or the other, you might have too much fun and no answers, or you might have solutions that keep on misworking, and over you go at them.
Great,
Okay,
thanks,
Bob?
Ben. Here's a question. I'm a bit of an optimizer and struggle with a coworker who is a conceptualizer when we are problem solving. How do we work together, valuing each other's strengths during group problem solving?
Well, one thing you do is you thank each other for their different approaches, and here's the thing we say: these are states, not traits, and what that means is these are changeable. These are not traits are not changeable. That's your personality. These are just the way you think. And what we do is we even have people. One of our colleagues has people chant at the beginning of a session: states, not traits. States, not traits. So that means we move around the wheel together. No matter what your state is, you move around. Now, we've had sessions where we've had deliberately split the groups into four different ones, and have the optimizers write down, here's what we like about the generators. And the generators like, here's what we like about the optimizers, and vice versa for the other two. And then talk about, here's what you guys could do to help us. Here's what you guys could do to help us. If we could only get these more things from you. So you share the stuff and you listen hard. And the optimizers should be very grateful for the conceptualizer, because that gives them something to do. If they didn't have the conceptualizer, they'd be working on the wrong problem. And then especially the conceptualizer are going to be really glad that they've got sharp people who are going to solve that problem once they get it figured out. So I think it's a matter of practice, working hard together, and in a session, basically say that to each other. We're going to try to work real hard together, and here's what I like about that idea you came up with, and here's what I like about this. So you use the language of innovation frequently in a session, using those the things you know and saying things to each other.
Great. Here's another one. How do you best move forward with limited information while still collecting and evaluating new information? Because many projects have a hard deadline for the information gathering phase, then drop it for the implementation phase. How do you continually bring new information into evolving, mature projects?
I think the key is, as you go along, you start every meeting with, let's do some fact-finding together. What's happened since the last time? Let's have a debrief of what have we learned from the last time we were together. Get those facts up, and you debrief and you say, okay, from those facts we got in front of us, is that going to change anything that we're doing where we are now? And it might. If a huge fact comes up and it changes your problem definition, by George, you're going to want to go back to that problem definition and come through the wheel again. You're not going to say we're tied to what's over there. So good talking to each other. Use the process really all times. Talk to each other. Don't ever get stuck saying, well, with this part we ought to keep it going. And it's amazing what good debriefing will debrief as often as possible. What have we learned? What have we learned? And then use that wheel backwards and forwards. It's totally okay. If you discover something in step 5 that somebody forgot to say in step 2, and say, we better go back and see if we have to redefine the problem. It is much better to do. So it's called flexing the wheel, making sure you're using things to your advantage. Make the process work for you, not make the process work you around.
Thanks, man. Another question. There's a little somebody has a little bit of needs some clarification around the different stages in stage 1 versus stage 2 and stage 3 in the process. Kind of where the how might we fits in the whole process. Kind of what you're doing inside stage 1 as a facilitator versus what you're doing as a facilitator at the later phases.
Okay. The problem definition is stage 2. That's where the how might we comes in. What happens is the fact finding is the part, that's the hinge between discovering a problem, which is number 1, and a good facilitator is making the group always discover problems. And if a group gets together and maybe hasn't much time to be together, might be you say, let's do step 1. What are some of the big problems we should be solving in this group? Get a big list down and have them agree on the most important problem for us in this group is. Then you go into fact finding. Or you start with fact finding. Fact finding is we got this fuzzy situation, and we use those fact finding questions that I said, and you generate lots and lots of facts. Facts start with who, what, when, where, why. A fact could be, I'm not sure about this, but here's what I think. Write it down. This is what Alice thinks this. Tom could say, in my opinion, ... Write it down. It's a fact. In Tom's opinion, ... Then you finally converge on what are the key facts, and they're always stated. They're always stated with who, what, where, in sentences. You got to have clear sentences, and not fuzzy stuff, but clear sentences. So those are fact finding. Now, problem definition is we're into idea finding. As soon as I begin a statement with how might we, the next thing that happens is I get a bunch of ideas. So that's not a fact-finding question, that's an idea-finding question. So how might we get more people to vacation in the North Pole in the summertime is going to generate some ideas. Okay, so those are the how might we's, and you work hard on getting how might we's, and then you subject them to what we call why was stopping. You'll notice that the third step has got 2 parts in it. The diverging part of how might we's and the diverging part of challenge mapping or why was stopping. And that's where you get into why might we pick a challenge we like, and then we say, like, how might we make better green stripes? And you ask why, you say it would help us indicate refreshment better, which comes out to how might we indicate refreshment better? Or what's stopping us from going ahead with the recommendation is we're afraid to make the recommendation without going ahead. So that means how might we do that? So in that third step, you are generating how might we's, and you are also getting clarifying the best challenges by asking why and what's stopping. Now, also out of that comes some ideas, and you start getting ideas, and they're fledgling ideas, and they start. You could generate quite a few ideas because you've broken the back of the problem at that point, and then you pick some of the best ideas and shift them over to optimization. Now, the optimization guys may want to throw in a bunch of ideas themselves once you've got the problem picked. So there's a little bit of a bridge there. Hope that helps.
Thanks, man. I think for anybody really interested in the old how might we and the problem definition, that's a special tip to tune into our next webinar, because that's really what we're going to be talking about. We're going to get in a lot more detail around problem definition. Just kind of a last question here. It's kind of around the whole concept of being overwhelmed by big data, and how do you sort of handle that? I know we often get lots of how do you get the market research people to optimize kind of the amount of information prior to one of our sessions? How do we manage that?
That's really critical. You've got to have a pre-consult, and that's the planning session. In that, you've got to bring the right people in, and the right people are going to definitely include the market research people, and they're going to include the people who are running the project, etc. and you got to be careful to bring them in, and then do a pre-consult with everybody there, which includes the market research people, which is what are we trying to do, what are the facts, what do we got, and the question becomes how might we make the great amount of information we've got into a palatable body of knowledge that would be good to send to our people and shrink it down and involve them in that creative step, which is we got to be creative about how we present the knowledge that we've got. Is there somebody that the group that might be at the session, in addition to bringing in your stuff, should we have somebody do a presentation on what they've learned? Is it possible that we should bring in a market research person to bring in new data to pile in on top of the old data that we've got in that session? So plan the session together and really say, okay, I think we got it, and we're really going to make it happen. But never leave out the key people. And that's something that is really important, going beyond market research. I had a session that was a bunch of people in Proctor trying to come up with new sayings, things they could say on television, new things that they could say. And they said we got to get around legals. They're so tough to get around. So we need a session. So we were planning it. We started to talk about who should be there. And then me being pretty naive, young, I said, well, what about legal? You haven't mentioned them. They said, look, kid, we can't bring them in. We're trying to get around them. Out of my mouth came one more naive thing. Who knows more about getting around legal than the legal department? Bring them in. They're the people who are going to help out. So be very careful that you bring in the right people that are going to help you do the very best in getting ready for the big session.
That's great. Well, that's about our hour. So I really want to thank everybody for attending. Hope you all enjoyed the webinar. And again, you can send us any questions offline. You have our email addresses there. Again, we sincerely thank you all for attending, and I hope you all will attend our next one. Until then, I hope you all have a great day, and we look forward to seeing and hearing from you before the next webinar. Thanks again.